Hello and welcome to the Manifestation Podcast with Peggy McColl. Peggy is a world-renowned wealth, business, and manifestation expert, as well as the New York Times best-selling author of Your Destiny Switch. Are you ready to manifest your dreams? Tune in now.
Hi there, it's Peggy McColl, and welcome back to the Manifestation Podcast. If you've been thinking about pursuing a goal, that's a goal that would stretch you and excite you at the same time, well, you are in the right place. Listen up, as I'm going to share with you how I manifested my very first dream home when I had no idea how I was ever going to do it. I didn't have any money at the time, and I certainly didn't have the means at the time to accomplish the goal that I had set for myself. So if we go back in time, let's go back to approximately 1995. This was a period of time where I was getting divorced from my husband, Charles, and we had a 2-year-old son at the time. Well, I decided that I was going to purchase a beautiful home, and not just any home. I described what that home would be like. I chose to have a home with 4 bedrooms, multiple bathrooms, a living room and a family room, a kitchen and a dining room, a nice big oversized double garage, and that the home would be located in a wonderful neighborhood where there would be parks close by and trails so that my son and I could go explore. Well, I started to look for the home. But before I even went looking for the home, I wrote out on a goal card a statement. And the statement that I wrote was the following: I, Peggy McColl, am so happy and so grateful that I own my beautiful home that is located in a gorgeous neighborhood with 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, an oversized garage, living room, family room, kitchen, dining room, and that I live there with my son and we love our home completely. That was on my goal card. And every day I would read my goal card, but I would also become emotionally connected to my goal card. And once I decided that this is what I was going to do, my husband and I had put our house on the market to sell it, and I went out looking for homes. And if there were open houses on the weekend, I went and looked at the homes that were for sale. I also went to the builders and I saw their home showrooms and their new home showrooms, and I would look at all these beautiful homes. And I remember one time when I was actively looking for a home, my husband, he was my husband at the time, he's my ex-husband now, but my husband Charles had asked me why I was looking for a home. And I didn't really understand the question. I said, I don't really understand why you're asking me that question. We were getting divorced. I was making plans for my future. And he said, well, we haven't sold our matrimonial home. We didn't even have visitors coming to our matrimonial home. So in other words, you didn't have any money, Peggy, to go and buy a home. Well, I knew that, but I also know this, that when you decide you're going to manifest a particular goal in your life, you do not have to know how. You can decide what you want, but you don't have to know how you're ever going to accomplish that goal. You have to decide that you want it. You have to see yourself with it. You have to connect to the emotions as if it's already here, and then it will manifest into form. How it's going to manifest into form? I didn't know, but I knew that I didn't have to know. I knew that the universe would take care of that. But meanwhile, back at the matrimonial home, we had our house on the market. No one was coming to see it. So we decided, well, let's decrease our price. So we decreased the price. Still no visitors, still no action, still no sale on the matrimonial home. A few months went by, we decreased the price again. What was happening is, as we were decreasing the price, what we had as far as equity in the matrimonial home was diminishing. It was decreasing. Therefore, it meant that I would have less money to go buy my own home. Well, finally, we realized that because the market at that time was really weak and our house was in a unique location, meaning it was out in the country in an undesirable area, I decided that I may just have to find my own way to purchase this home. Even though I was employed at the time and I did have a job and I did have a salary, I still didn't have any extra money to go and purchase a home. So despite all of that, I stayed focused on the outcome and connected to that outcome, me purchasing a home and owning a home and living in the home as if it was already done. And then I heard about a very special draw. And this draw was occurring in the city that I lived in. And this draw allowed you to purchase a ticket to win a home. And essentially it worked like this. You could buy a ticket for $100, and the grand prize was a beautiful home in a gorgeous area. And the home was not only decorated, it was completely furnished. And part of the grand prize included an automobile, groceries for a year, legal expenses all being paid, and moving expenses covered as well. So when I heard about that draw, I thought, perfect. This is exactly what I'm looking for. So I went to the home because it was available for people to go and visit. It was open 7 days a week. You could go and visit this home and buy a ticket. So I went and visited the home. And oddly enough, the home was a match for what I had set as my goal. So now I had something even more concrete for my visualization, for really seeing myself and my son living in this beautiful home. And this home was located on a particular street and it had an address. So what I did was I changed my goal card. And on my goal card, it said, I, Peggy McColl, am so happy and so grateful now that my son, Michelle, and I are living at, and I put the address of the home. And I would go and visit that home as often as I could, because as I mentioned, it was open for them to sell tickets to other people. I would go and visit. But I wouldn't just go and visit, I would visualize. And as I walked into the home, I would imagine that I was coming home from work. I would imagine that my son was out playing in the backyard with his friends as he was older. I saw him and I living in this home, enjoying this home. I would sit on the furniture in each of the rooms, and I would imagine us watching a Disney movie on TV. I'd go and sit at the kitchen, and I would imagine that my son and I would be sitting there having breakfast together. I'd go and sit at the head table in the dining room at the head spot, and I would imagine that we would be having our family special occasion dinners at our dining room table. And then I'd go and sit in the formal living room, and I'd imagine having family or guests over and be entertaining in my formal living room. And then I'd go into the bedrooms, and I knew exactly which room would be my son's. And then I had 2 extra guest rooms, and then I'd walk into the master suite. And in the master bedroom, as I mentioned, there was furniture. There was a beautiful sleigh bed. And I got up on the bed and I laid down and I'd look at the ceiling and I would imagine waking up in the morning and that's what I would see. And I'd imagine going to sleep at night and that would be the last thing that I would see before I drift off into sleep. And I was fully embracing the experience and the emotions of living in this home. And then I would walk into the ensuite bathroom that was attached to the master suite. And there was a beautiful, large Roman tub. And I would jump in the tub and I'd put my arms up and I would just close my eyes and I would imagine having a bath. And I could even smell the bath salts. And so I kept my clothes on while I was doing this because there were other people mulling around the home as well, but I ignored them. I didn't pay attention to them. I saw this house as our house. We owned this home. Nobody else owned this home. We own this home. So while this went on, there were months up until the draw where they chose the ticket for the winning draw of who would win this beautiful dream home. And that draw occurred on December the 7th. And on December 7th that year, Dr. John Goodman won the house. I didn't win the house. But this is a very important lesson in goal achievement. This story goes on, so stay with me, but here's an important lesson. If you find that you don't accomplish the goal the way you thought it might have been accomplished, do not throw away your goal. I believed that it may not have occurred the way I would have loved by winning the house, but if I really wanted a house, I had to see myself in possession of it. So even though that event occurred, I was happy for Dr. John Goodman, but I never lost sight of my goal. I kept connected to me owning a beautiful home. So I modified my goal card again. I, Peggy McColl, am so happy and grateful that I live in my beautiful 4-bedroom home. And I went back to the original version of my goal card. And I would visualize and I would see myself, my son, living in our home. A few months passed, And then one evening, I woke up in the middle of the night and I just had this feeling, this thought to go to that home. And it was a very strange experience because it's almost like I heard a voice say to me, go to the home. And I knew exactly which home it meant. It meant that dream home. So the next day, my son and I drove over to where the dream home was. And sure enough, there was a for sale sign on the lawn. Well, we happened to have friends that lived in that neighborhood. So we stopped off at our friends. And I said to my friends, I said, I'm going to call the real estate agent. And my friend's husband said, why? And I said, well, I want to go see that house. He said to me, well, you know that house very likely better than most people know that house. I said, that's true, because I had visualized living in it, but the real estate agent didn't know that. So then he said to me, okay, that's fine, but you don't have any money. You haven't sold your matrimonial home. I said, well, the real estate agent doesn't know that either. And I have to remember, in my mind, there are a lot of people that'll try and dissuade you from going after your goal, especially if it seems illogical. But I didn't allow his questions, and I understand where his questions were coming from, but I didn't allow his questions to influence me. So I called the real estate agent and I asked him to meet me at the home, and he did. And as that real estate agent was putting the key in the door and opening the door, I was imagining I was putting the key in my door and that this real estate agent was visiting my home. And as I walked in the home, I noticed that Dr. John Goodman had left all the furniture and all the decor in the home. He had no use for the furniture. He had no use for the decor. He wanted to sell it as a complete offering, the house with everything included. And I really liked that idea. So I walked around that home with a realtor, looking around and really embracing, this is my home. And I left there that day, and a couple days later, I was driving by the home again, and I thought, I'd like to go back for another visit. So I called the realtor and I said, could I come back for a second visit? Only this time I'm going to bring my son with me. And he said, sure. So I went back for a second visit. I brought Michelle. Remember, he was 2.5 at the time. So I got to see Michelle running around the home. Why did I do that? To help cement the visualization experience, to really see it happening. Well, a couple more days had gone by and I was listening to some audios in my car, and I was driving by that house again, and I heard the speaker on the audio talking about the philosophy of stretching. Well, what's the philosophy of stretching? The philosophy of stretching is the following. It's when you think you can't, you must, not for what you get, but for who you become. That for me was such a transformational moment. In that instant, I grabbed my phone because an idea popped into my mind. I grabbed my phone and I called the realtor and I said, could you meet me at the house now? I'd like to make an offer. And he said, sure. And so he met me at the house and we sat at that dining room table. And I said, here's what I would like to offer the doctor. I'd like to offer that I'll pay him a deposit right now, and that in 2 months, I'm moving into the home with my son. I'll pay him 10% of the purchase price the day I move in. I will pay him an occupancy fee for 6 months until I close the deal on December 1st. Now, when I was sharing that offer with the realtor, he looked at me with this most strange face. He was concerned. He was like, I've never heard of an offer like this. I said, are you willing to present it to the seller? He said, I guess so. And so I wrote him a check for the deposit. But here's the part that I want you to understand. I wrote that check and knew that I had to get to the bank to transfer some money over to cover the check. I didn't have the money at the time, but obviously when you make an offer in real estate, there's a period of time. He has to call the seller, make arrangements to meet with him. I figured it would probably take him a day to do that. So I knew I had time to drive over to the bank and transfer some money. I actually took a cash advance on my Visa to cover the first deposit check. Now, I do not recommend, this is not what I'm saying. I'm not saying go buy a house with a cash advance on your Visa. That is not what I'm suggesting. And the only reason why I did it is because I knew that once I made the deposit, put my name on a legally binding contract. I gave myself no way out, that I would find a way to follow through. Was I scared? Absolutely. But I knew enough about myself that I understood techniques to manage my fear and to turn that fear into faith. So the realtor took the offer to the seller. He accepted my offer. I had a deal. Now I had to come up with 10% of the money for my move-in date, which was 60 days later. And I did not know how I was going to come up with that money. So I thought about it and I thought, well, who could I talk to about this? By the way, I had talked to Charles, my husband at the time, and I asked him if he would be willing to keep the matrimonial home. I didn't need any furniture. I didn't need any money. He could keep the home. And he was thrilled with that solution. So he agreed. So now I'm in a position, he didn't ask me what I was doing or how I was doing it. So now I thought, who can I talk to about this? This was a very unusual situation. And I knew that if I talked to most people, they would tell me that I was crazy. And I wasn't interested in hearing other people tell me that I was crazy. So I thought about one of my really good friends. Her name is Val. So I called Val. I said, hey, Val, would you meet me for lunch? And she said, sure. So I met up with Val for lunch. Now, Val is a very optimistic, positive woman. She was also a very successful woman. So I knew that she would not condemn what I had done. I knew she would be supportive of it. And I knew she was somebody who would play a game with me of possibilities or opportunities. How can I make this happen? So Val and I met for lunch. We sat on a park bench and I told her what I had done. And she said, okay, all right, let's think about this. So she said to me, she said, do you have any money in your retirement plan? Well, at the time I was a very young woman. I was in my early 30s. And I said, well, I have some money in there that I put in years ago, but I don't think it's very much. She said, well, find out how much you have in there, and that if you withdraw it, because they're going to hold some tax, which is fine, that if you withdraw that money, how much would you net? So I called my investment guy and I asked him on the phone. I said, how much if I cash in all the money that I have in my retirement plan right now, would I net dollar for dollar? And he called me back about an hour later and he said that you would net, and the amount was exactly what I needed to move into the home. So Val said, cash it in. A home is an investment. Your retirement's an investment. Do it. So I did it. I had all the money to move into that home. It was 10% of the purchase price. Well, that got me part of the way there, but I still had a long way to go. But what was wonderful about that experience is my son and I had moved into the home and we were loving and enjoying our home. And I was working, as I mentioned, I had a job. I had a career. I was working for a company in Ottawa, which is where I'm living now. This was a brand new startup company. This company sold dedicated access to the internet. And this was early years. Remember I mentioned 1995? This was really when the World Wide Web was really opening up. I actually registered some domain names back then as well. That's when I set up my own business as an online presence, because I had incorporated a business in 1994 and I started to do part-time work doing workshops at my dining room table, helping people achieve their goals. And so I did have my part-time business going. So I managed to save some extra money. Thousands of dollars, not enough to close the deal, but I had saved some money. And then the company that I was working for decided that they were going to go public. And it was the first internet company in our country to go public. Well, as an employee, we were invited to purchase shares, and they were non-restrictive, which meant that when the IPO, the initial public offering, in other words, when the company went public, happened, we could sell the shares the day they went public. And I didn't really know anything about the stock market. I certainly knew nothing about IPOs. I wasn't even familiar with what the process was, but I educated myself. And then I made a decision that I would take all the money that I had saved by doing some part-time work and put it on the stock. And the company was going to go public in October. And remember, I mentioned to you that my closing of the house was going to occur on December the 1st. So I thought, okay, I'm going to take all the money that I had saved, put it on the stock, and if it goes public in October and it does okay, I'm going to have all the money to close the deal. But if it doesn't do well, it still gives me a bit of time to figure it out. Now, when this was going on, when this whole process was going on, I was living in the house, as I've mentioned. I would have experiences where I would feel fear. I would start to think, what are you doing? I would start to think, how in the world are you going to come up with the money? And I would entertain doubt. Well, I know enough to understand that that is contamination. That is destruction mode. That is poison. And so I established even more techniques to change how I was feeling, to switch away from fear into faith. And one of those techniques was the following. As soon as I would feel myself starting to feel fearful, I would simply ask myself a very powerful 4-word question. What was that 4-word question? The question was the following. What would you love? And as soon as I'd ask myself that question, what would you love? I would think about the answer. I'd love to own this home. I'd love to have all the money to pay for this home. All right. Then it would lead to the next question. What would that feel like? Well, it's going to feel great. And I would relax myself. I would relax in the knowing that it was already done. And there were some days where I would feel that fear come up multiple times. And multiple times I would go into my switching techniques. I would just focus only on what I wanted. So there were some days that fear was coming up time after time after time. Sometimes it would occur, 80 times. I mean, there was a lot of switching going on, but I found it to be very, very effective. So the company was going to go public. Let's go back to that. And it was around October timeframe. And they realized, the people that were working on the IPO realized they needed more time. So they moved the IPO date to November 26th. Now remember, my house deal is closing on December 1st. So I called the broker and I asked him, I said, okay, when this company goes public, because I had put all my savings on this stock, when this company goes public and I sell my shares on the day of the IPO, when will I get my money? And he said, you'll have your money within 4 days. And my lawyer, who was doing the closing of the deal, had told me that I needed to be in his office on November the 30th with a check so that the deal would close on December 1st. And I said, no problem. But meanwhile, I'm freaking out. But every time I'd freak out, I would calm myself down. Peggy, what would you love? Okay, I'd love to own this home. I'd love to have the deal be closed. This is my home. It's all done. Okay, what's that feel like? Just go straight to feeling, and I would relax in the knowing that it was already done. And so on the 26th of November, the company went public and the stock went skyrocketing. It skyrocketed and I sold it at its peak. 4 days later, I had all the cash to close the deal on my home, and I owned that home and lived there with my son for 8 years, and we sold it for almost double what I paid for it. So the lessons in this story are probably very obvious, but let me summarize for you. The lessons are: decide what it is that you want, even if you have no idea how you're ever going to accomplish it. Set some goals that really stretch you and excite you at the same time. And remember that goals are not for what you get, but for who you become in the process. This experience strengthened me. I have continued to prosper and I've continued to stretch myself and pursue goals that allowed me to bring out a greater and grander version of who I am. And also remember that it's all about the feeling. What are you feeling? You must feel as if you've already accomplished the goals that you've set for yourself. And if you want to find out more about manifesting your dream home, I actually have a program on that. It's called Manifest Your Dream Home. And you can find out more about it at manifestyourdreamhome.com. I also have a free book that we give away called Yes to the Dream. You can go to yestothedream.com to download my free ebook. But either way, I want to encourage you, set some goals that really cause you to stretch and grow, because the benefit is not what you get, it's who you become. So that's my podcast for today. I invite you to provide a review for it and to share it with others. Thank you for being here. I look forward to being back with you again in the next episode of the Manifestation Podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to the Manifestation Podcast with Peggy McColl. Take your learning deeper by signing up for the free morning manifestation videos at morningmanifestation.com. And follow Peggy on all social media channels for daily updates. See you again.